So I'm Mike St. Cross. I'm a senior security consultant with AWS Professional Services. Today, I'm going to talk to you about maturing your threat detection and incident response capabilities. It's really meant to apply so no matter where you are on your cloud journey in AWS. So let's start off with why. Many of us are probably familiar with incident response, but let's just break down what makes us want to mature our threat detection and incident response capabilities. So we want to reduce the impact and scope of incidents. Lack of IR preparedness is the greatest contributor to the impacts and cost of attacks. And we want to prepare ourselves to respond effectively and efficiently. Organizations that I see prepared for IR substantially reduce their mean dwell time. And then we also want to scale incident response capabilities. We're in the cloud. No matter where we are in our journey, we still want to leverage the power of the cloud to respond faster and more efficiently than what we're doing traditionally on-prem. So the NIST 861 incident response lifecycle, I'm showing you this here. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. This is just to provide you with a familiar frame of reference. We use this lifecycle in AWS. It's common across our customers. And the maturity journey today that I bring you through, it's all going to be framed within these lifecycle stages. So if you're not familiar with it, we've got preparation, operations, and post-incident activity. Preparation, we're preparing our incident response teams to detect and respond to incidents within AWS. And then for operations, that's the core. We're performing our work within IR, detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery. And then post-incident activity, we want to iterate on the outcomes of our security events and the simulations that we've done to then generate efficacy in our response down the line. So let's just talk about the differences of incident response in AWS. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Ron talked about the security as shared responsibility. If you're not familiar with the shared responsibility model, you can check that out on your own. I don't have the time to go into it today, but as our shared responsibility in the cloud changes, your options for incident response also change. You're more or less responsible depending on what you're running in the cloud, and the level of responsibility you have for yourselves to consider when you're doing IR can change. Response within the service domain itself, it's typically done by reviewing and issuing API calls, rather than we're thinking about traditional host-based or on-prem network-based response. Number 3 there, the main method customers are using to interact with AWS in the cloud, it's by using RESTful API interactions through endpoints. And those can be all over the globe, right? Our customer base is operating in all the geographical regions that we provide. And then number 4, right, we enjoy the benefits of the dynamic and elastic nature of the cloud. But with that same short-lived and fast-paced infrastructure, maybe during an investigation, something I'm looking at has been modified or it's been blown away. Number 5, we can't just go plug into a server in the data center to collect the data we need for an investigation, right? We have to really think about collecting that data over the wire proactively, figuring out ways that we're going to collect it during an incident because we don't have access to that server itself. And then 6, like the real benefit that I spoke about on the previous slide, while automation it's used on premise, but it's essential in the cloud and it's much simpler to carry out in the cloud. And we'll get into that when we talk about more of the advanced stages. Just all that being said, much of IR remains the same. So for those of you that have not taken a journey yet with IR in the cloud, the process of performing IR is the same. Subject matter expertise, it's still critical. Logs and endpoints still need to be monitored and acquired and analyzed. And I bring us to this point because I want you to think about where you are today. So whether you're digitally native, you've been operating in the cloud from day one, or you're a large organization looking to migrate more workloads into the cloud, you can benefit from what we talk about in this session. So I'm struggling to switch my slides. So we just want to talk about the services that you're going to see today. You don't have to remember all of these. There's a lot of them. I just want us to see them multiple times. So this is not an exhaustive list either for all the services that are relevant to threat detection and incident response. But we have our log focused services, we have our detection analysis focused services, we have our protection focused services, and we have our automation services. And I'm not putting these in a box. A lot of these services do transcend these boxes that we put them here on this slide visually, but I want to break them down for when you see them again next. So quick wins. We want to cover what can we do in a week. So like I said, if you're looking at this today and you don't have any experience with IR in the cloud, or maybe you just haven't thought of using some of these services yet, we want to cover right now what you can carry out and enable with our services or with preparing your folks here in just 1 week. So quick wins, low hanging fruit. Let's get into that. So let's think about the preparation phase of the NIST incident response lifecycle. Preparing for an incident, it's critical for effective incident response. This is really where the majority of your work is going to be occurring, no matter where you are in your journey. In the cloud presence, we think of it as you're preparing across these 3 domains: people, process, and technology. But when you see this slide, you're thinking what's encompassed in people, process, and technology that I can do in a week. So for people, if it's just one of you or if it's hundreds of you, you just want to make an effort today, this week, to understand the responsibilities and roles you have during an incident. We're not going to go and try to create a RACI right now, but you should have the names of folks that you want to get into a meeting right now if an incident occurs, and you want to be sure they actually have access to AWS. Oftentimes, we get people on a call and they don't even have access to the console or the right tools to even begin working. Let's think about the processes too, right? So let's make sure basic stuff like our account alternate contexts are set. Oftentimes we'll see customers don't actually have like an email address put into the security contact in their account, or they don't have a redundant email address, so it's not a distributed list. It goes to someone who's left the company. And then we can't even tell you if you're having a security incident in your account that AWS has detected for you. Also, we just want to understand what support plan we have. Depending on what you have out there, you may have different levels of support, but regardless, we want to know how to engage support. You don't want to be sitting there Googling how to contact AWS support during an incident, right? And I've seen that happen before. Finally, what can we do technology today? That's probably what we're all thinking of. So what do we have that I can one click turn on? Or what can I do with a few configuration steps to be impactful in a week? So billing alarms, we want to enable those with CloudWatch, or now known as Event Bridge, to identify potential attacks related to Bitcoin mining, other botnet instance deployments, other weird activity in your accounts. In addition to that, enabling CloudTrail. Those are our API audit logs. Many of you are probably familiar with CloudTrail, but that'll allow us to start building the ability to investigate incidents, or at least have visibility into what was done in a scenario this week. And then let's set some retention on that so we don't just get rid of them afterwards. Guard duty, that's a really core service that we're going to talk about and again throughout this today. That's going to provide us continuous monitoring of the following data sources, which we'll cover in the next couple slides. But no matter if you configure them or not, Guard Duty is going to monitor CloudTrail logs, DNS logs, S3 logs, VPC flow logs, and then optionally, now we have Kubernetes audit logs included in that. Security Hub, quick win around Security Hub is just the security standards. If you enable the standards within Security Hub, and I'm referring to the standards of CIS AWS Foundation's benchmark, or AWS Foundational Security Best Practices, or PCI DSS if it's relevant for you, it only costs 0.001 cent per check. So it can enable with a few clicks, and you got a 30-day free trial that will show you the usage costs that would incur. So you can even begin to see value of it without paying for it yet. And then estimate it what it would cost to leave it on next month, right? But we just want to get ourselves a visibility into what's occurring throughout our accounts or within our single account if that's how we're operating. And finally, Access Analyzer. So IAM Access Analyzer, if you turn it on today, you'll get insight right away into any resources that are being shared, maybe outside of your accounts or being shared with accounts that maybe aren't yours or maybe you weren't aware of. So let's go a little more into the detail about the operations stage. I need to set this for you here so that we can think about this as we go through the rest of the maturity journey. This is where the responding and remediating of security incidents occurs, and then this is where a lot of our maturity iteration will be spent. So, like I said before, detection analysis, containment, eradication, recovery. We're going for quick wins in a week though, so we're really only focused on detection and eradication right now. What can we get in a week for detection value, right? So we've enabled CloudTrail billing alarms with Event Bridge, trusted advisor checks for our source alerts as well. We're going to also get active threat detection from Guard Duty. We're going to get overall security posture visibility from Security Hub, and then we're getting a view into externally shared resource with Access Analyzer. So I'm showing this here just to help you remember. I just talked about a bunch of stuff, and it's like, well, what do we turn on, Mike? Right there, laying it out for you. We're going to build on what you see here and throughout the rest of this session. Again, for quick wins, eradication stage, I had you turn on guard duty. I had you turn on trusted advisor. If there were any findings in Access Analyzer for externally shared resources as well, we want to remediate the most critical guard duty findings. Of course, we want to consider the business impact of that as well, right? Let's not delete anything if it's critical to our production workloads, but also if there's any findings from trusted advisor or Access Analyzer as well, right? We want to target remediating those. And here is a matrix view. So we're going to build on this as I go throughout this talk. You can see at a high level just what the steps we've taken. Each one of these we're going to iterate on, and then post this in activity. We haven't really thought about that yet because we're really just trying to get started, right? And this is where we really start to put some effort in. So this leg of the journey, the maturity model, can take many months, even up to years, depending upon the size of the organization. So let's get back to the preparation phase again. So think about our people domain. Now that we actually have time to think about this, let's actually define a cloud incident response RACI. So additionally, it's critical for you to have an effective response. Those stakeholders and responders are trained on AWS technologies. And like I mentioned, they have access to the environment. Let's actually make sure that they understand what they have access to and what they can interact with, right? And then in this foundational stage, we really should be becoming familiar with all of the AWS incident response related support capabilities. So if you have an account team or an account manager, because you're operating at that level, they can inform you of what you have access to. Thinking about process again, let's develop an actual incident response process. That way we have something to follow when a security event occurs. So clear steps and workflows to help us respond quickly. That really means we want to develop playbooks to respond to security incidents. And we want to test those playbooks and how we react to them with tabletop simulations. You might already have an existing incident response process if you're listening to this, but regardless of your current state, those tabletops, you should be conducted them multiple times a year, right? So you can update and iterate on what's in your playbooks, figure out what's not working well. And then if you're just getting started, you have your first tabletop set of baseline from. So on to technology. So we're actually going to build using organizations now. So we're going to establish foundational best practices that includes AWS organizations as a service so that we can effectively manage and govern our multi-account environment. If you just have a single account, this isn't necessarily relevant for you, but you can think about what it would look like if you would expand in the future. So we want to start out with a security OU, dedicated security tooling account, and a log archival account. In that log archive account, we want to be centralizing our CloudTrail logs and any of your logs we're going to enable down the line. And then for the security tooling account, we want to be able to enable aggregation of any data from other security tools or the same security tools that I talked about before that are enabled in other accounts, right? We want this to be the single account, the single pane of glass where that data is aggregated so that our incident responders and our security engineers can go to one place and have visibility into what's occurring across all of our accounts in our organization. Let's make it easy for them. So we're starting to build up our capabilities now. You can see here we've changed the model from just having those services in a single account to having the security tooling account to having a log archive account. You can see the services we're about to start to think about adding to enhance capabilities in orange. Let's consider for our alert sources now. We're starting to get more holistic. We've got logs stored in CloudWatch or S3. We know if there's a sudden change in billing forecasting with our billing alarms. Maybe we have partner tools integrated in our environment. We might even have people reaching out to us, telling us, because they now understand and they have access to AWS, like, oh, hey, I saw this, I saw that. There's many ways those alerts are going to come in. And then, right, we set our security contact in our account. So AWS support can even come out and contact us now. Detection is a part of security control engineering. So as an example, like an organization would establish a directive control around a root account. Let's think about for the root user, we're saying it should only be used in specific and well-defined activities. Great. So what do we do from AWS organizations? Maybe we implement preventive control to keep people from using it in appropriate ways, but we're also going to enable the AWS config service for that detective capability so that we can create a detective control around maybe when root access keys were created, right? And at this foundational stage, we want to increase our detective capabilities. So we're enabling Amazon Inspector for continuous vulnerability management and detection of vulnerabilities in our computing operating systems. And finally, if we're not sure about what data at rest we have in our environments, we can think about enabling Amazon Macie to perform automated sensitive data discovery in S3 buckets in our accounts. You can see that here at the bottom, we're continuing to centralize and retain all this logging information in our log archive account as well. And at the foundational stage, we want to be carrying out the full cycle of operations now, right? So we can start by investigating most guard duty findings, right? We've moved beyond the most critical ones, and we're going to analyze our log sources and our evidence. We're going to collect artifacts, and we're going to create a culture of documenting what actions we took. This is another view just to show you slicing into security services. So talk about the services we enable. What does that look like into Security Hub as findings? That's our single pane of glass. And we want to establish a containment strategy. So we want to define how to contain a true positive. That can be different depending on what your organization considers a true positive and what the workloads actually run like. We also want to consider timing, tactics, and purpose in that as well for our eradication. And again, in eradication, now that we're investigating and triaging most findings, we want to be methodical in our eradication. So let's first identify all actions and effective resources. We've moved beyond most critical, right? So we don't just want to delete or restore willy-nilly. We want to consider the business impact throughout all these levels of finding severities. For operations, we're now thinking about recovery because we're at that level of maturity. So for recovery, we can leverage AWS backup to help us in our restoration efforts for the entire account backup. We want to validate that our backups are safe or unaffected prior to restoration. We want to test to verify the systems are working properly post-restoration. And then we want to actually address the vulnerabilities that were associated with the incident, right? And we'll continue to build on that recovery as I go through. Last, we want to start creating a culture to learn from incidents to avoid recurrence and minimize the time loss. So we want to establish a lessons learned process or a postmortem process, as you might call it. Just want to look at when, what is involved, who is involved, then use this information to verify our improvements, and then how those improvements can be implemented and tracked in the future as we get more mature. So again, we're building on that matrix model. So we have our foundational capabilities, and we're going to move on to building efficiency, so advancing to the efficient level. We're back at this technological view. So this may have been where you were at the beginning of the talk, and you're just wanting me to get to this point. Well, now we're at it. So in our efficient maturity level, we're seeing advances in our technological preparation. So we want to create a forensics OU structure for isolating our compromised resources and accounts. We're thinking more about improving our forensics capabilities as well. So we're thinking about automation, such as automated backups, automated snapshots, automated isolation of resources. Maybe we move accounts automatically to the forensics OU for isolation. We also see ourselves adding a tagging strategy. It's very helpful to be able to rely on complete and accurate tags during an incident. I can't tell you how valuable it is when I have a data classification tag that I can trust so that I know it was this type of sensitivity of data, and now I know how to triage it from this first step. And at this stage, we're going to talk about auto remediations, which is probably what some folks wanted us to get to, and really want to manage auto remediations with infrastructure as code. So I see Firefly, we'll talk about that a little more next, but we want to be able to manage our infrastructure as code so we can facilitate governance, versioning, have security scanning occurring on that IAC, and have something that's repeatable and reusable by other IR engineers. Back to our account model, this level, it's really around logging coverage and then our automated response capabilities. So now we're looking to collect VPC flow logs, DNS logs, and then maybe raw packets for analysis as well. And then I talked about automation, so we're looking at AWS Lambda there and Systems Manager. So at the efficient level, let's make sure we're implementing things only once. So not implementing things, but implementing automation only once all the manual processes are fully fleshed out and proven effective. If you don't actually know how to do it manually, you can't automate it, is really what we're talking about here. But examples of services, event bridge to Lambda. You could trigger a Lambda function which restarts logging when CloudTrail senses that CloudTrail logging was stopped. Just to visualize what that would look like. We're not just limited to automation off of CloudTrail APIs. We can do it off of guard duty findings, inspector findings, even those rolled into Security Hub. We can have automation actions off of. We do have our AWS automated response framework as well, and that's built upon Systems Manager, which I spoke about. We can send some links to check that out offline. And then finally, at this level, we're considering ourselves to be efficient. So we really need to have established metrics that help us improve. Like, how do you know you've gotten any better? Well, I know I've gotten better because my mean time to recover from a specific type of incident at high priority for me has been reduced. And at this stage, we're really looking to collect our own indicators of compromise to feed back into our playbooks to once again improve the speed and efficiency of our investigations. I've seen this before. Let's put it into playbook so that I know where to go look because I know what this compromise looked like last time and what happened afterwards. And now you can see how far we've come in our matrix. So we're laying these controls on top of each other, destack. We think about maybe where can we go next? I think I've done everything. You may be at this stage today if you're digitally native. Maybe you're ready to work towards this right now. So we're back in our preparation phase and we're thinking about our processes. So we've already run our tabletop situations simulations. We already do that multiple times a year. But what else can we do? So we're going to get more granular in the capabilities. So you should be thinking about forming purple teams, mix of red and blue there, red teams. And of course, we're going to create tabletop exercises specifically to test those teams' capabilities as well. So what is the purple team going to focus on in the cloud? We're really focusing on detection mechanisms, tools, standard operating procedures, improving those so that our SOPs are ready for when an incident occurs. And then red team exercises, we want to simulate an attack objective. Also, review the policy for penetration testing on AWS. There's a lot of things that you are allowed to do without requesting permission. There are some other things that you need to request AWS permission to do. So maturity around forming these optimized level roles is what we're looking for. And at this level, additional focuses on better understanding our threat landscape. So you may have already been doing threat modeling today from an application security perspective, but an incident response engineer should have insight into that as well, right? So if you're common workloads, you should be able to threat model from the IR perspective and not just from the application security perspective, or you should be integrating in the AppSec process for threat modeling and having the IR folks consulted in what goes into those threat models. And we want to be using frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK to understand our threat actor techniques and procedures. And then at this stage, we're really going to think about integrating threat intelligence into our environment. So GuardDuty has the capability for you to manually integrate your own threat intelligence. You can also use third-party sources. You can also use open source sources. We really want to be providing the ability to enrich our findings and enrich our logs and leverage that cyber threat intelligence that we're paying for with our subscriptions at this optimized level. So on to what else could we add to this? It almost was looking pretty complete, right? But how can we natively investigate in the cloud? So how can we reduce our pivot times? I don't want to bounce around between a bunch of different tools when an incident's happening. I need to be fast. So you can enable Amazon Detective, right? That's our service that facilitates triage and cyber threat hunting. But also at this stage, we have all that log data in that account. Let's also be thinking about what more can we do with the data that we have in AWS. So just talking more about Detective, showing what it looks like, reducing that pivoting time. I click on that. I have the menu context pop up where I can go pivot into Detective and investigate from a detective view on what happened with that finding without going to another tool. So as I mentioned at this level, we're thinking more about what we want to do with our Security Hub findings, our log data. We're already leveraging Detective for investigation, but maybe we want to start thinking about machine learning. Maybe we send our data to Security Lake. Maybe we normalize that with data from other cloud providers, or maybe third-party tools that we have. And maybe we even have a data scientist training machine learning models in SageMaker on our Security Lake data or on our Security Hub findings to generate insights that we can focus on and use to improve our process down the line. If you wanted to look more into that, we've just released a blog post on generating machine learning insights for Security Lake using SageMaker. And thinking about recovery at this level, we are focused on automation. So if you think back to the NIST 861 Security Incident Handling Guide, that recovery has got to be done using clean, verified backups and systems that may need to be rebuilt from scratch. So that even means like you need to launch an entirely new AWS account. So I kind of danced around Control Tower today. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but let's consider at this stage using Control Tower for account bootstrapping or venting mechanisms with Service Catalog as part of Control Tower. How am I going to vent a new account quickly? That's a way to do it. And then also thinking about AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery Service. we're not just doing backups or automated backups. We're doing automated backups across availability zones at this stage. So an elastic disaster recovery is a way to do that. So we can see here we've reached the end of our maturity matrix, and we have a real full view of threat detection and incident response on this maturity journey plan. But I didn't cover everything. So if you want to have more in-depth coverage, please do read the AWS Security Incident Response Guide. It just goes into way more detail that I couldn't spend speaking to you about today. It's updated very frequently. And I have some incident response workshops as well that I can send out there in the chat for folks to go and mess around with today, right? That cover different scenarios. We have corresponding publicly available playbooks as well that you can follow along with to respond to these scenarios that are in these workshops. And just kind of get started thinking about this with your quick wins if that's a stage you're at this week. So I'm at about 25 minutes. I know I went a little fast there and covered a ton of material.